Good evening, everyone. My name is George Farrington, and I'm the president of the board. Our chairman, Mr. Hollowell, called, and he's running a little late. He works down in the Boston area, but he expects to be here fairly soon. So we'll call this meeting of the Budget Committee to order. It's Wednesday, February 1st. The time is 6:32. We're in the North Boardroom, and we'll start with a roll call. Mrs. Oden?
Here.
Dr. Murataki's not here yet. Ms. Van Twyver?
Here.
Mrs. Ziem was here. Ms. Hohensee?
Here.
Mr. Kaufman?
Here.
Mr. Farrington is here, so we have a quorum. We also have Dr. Brown, Mr. Donovan, Mr. Frederickson, Mr. Boucher, and there'll be others later, I assume. Had a lot of input, response, emails, communications since our first meeting. I sat down this afternoon and tried to respond to emails. I think I'm up to like 43 or 4 emails on various subjects, and I wanted to get all caught up and make sure everybody knew that the meeting was tonight and we'd have an opportunity here in a minute for some public comment. And I sent that response, and I went back 10 minutes later, and I had 2 more, and I didn't get to respond to those. So a lot of interest, and we certainly appreciate that interest. And we don't normally do public comment at these meetings, but we've talked about it, and if I could get a motion to allow public comment on the budget proposal. Mrs. Oden?
Motion to suspend the rules to have public comment before the budget meeting.
Okay. Seconded by Mrs. Ziem. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. So, let's see here. I'm sorry, do we have a sign-in sheet over there? Yeah, thank you. As I said in my emails, if any of you received those, we don't want to step on anyone's individual right to speak. However, if you're here with a group and you can decide that someone would be a good spokesman for your group, we're perfectly willing to recognize the group and the individual spokesman. When you come down, all we ask is that you give your name and address for the record. So we will start this evening with Sarah Muse. And if I can, I will note that Dr. Murataki is here.
Hello, my name is Sarah Muse. I live at 32B Cortlandt Street, Nashua. I'm coming to you as a student you're not used to seeing. In fact, I'm sure hearing from some of these students will be a first for many of you. See, I've never been a straight-A student. I've never been involved with student council, sports, or extracurricular activities. I'm not someone who has school spirit, but I'm someone who has always been eager to learn and has tried to stick up for the kids nobody wants to, especially when their education is in jeopardy. I'm coming to you as a student who has severely struggled with social anxiety, paranoia, the whole of my school experience. I noticed it in middle school, but it worsened my freshman and sophomore year of high school. Anxiety to you may just be a word, but for many of these students, it's the very reason Clearway is so important to them. If we are going to get technical, anxiety is a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease. But no matter how many times I read a definition to you, you still wouldn't understand. It's not just being a fearful person or having ticklish little butterflies in your stomach like you do going down a giant roller coaster on your very first date. I want you to understand what it's like to be in our bodies and our brains. The only way I can explain anxiety to you is for you to remember when you were little kids. Do you remember when you did something bad, when you broke something or ruined something in the house beyond repair? Remember that feeling and the thoughts that raced through your head, knowing you did something wrong and just waiting for your parents to come home to punish you. That gut-wrenching feeling of dread in your stomach because there's nothing you can do and it's all out of your control. Well, people who suffer from anxiety feel like that from the moment they wake up to the moment they fall asleep. Everyone is different. There are good days and bad days. It's impossible to throw individuals into the same container and label it anxiety. They aren't an ingredient or a brand. Everyone is different. But let me explain what it would look like if you were to view the inside of my mind freshman and sophomore year. You wake up and everything is wrong. It's wrong. Your clothes are wrong. It felt like you didn't get enough time in your day. You're moving too slow to get ready, but it feels like that's as fast as you can go. Constantly checking time, constantly checking your clock, and constantly checking my phone. Even though time is all I have, it feels like I never have enough. Before I actually arrive to school, I check myself in the mirror not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 5 before I go into school. It's not that my appearance has changed since I left my house, it's that my interior has. It takes me 20 extra minutes for me to enter school. I'm always late. If you walk fast, nobody notices you. Walking through a sea of people makes it worse. Everyone is loud. Everything is always so loud. It has come to the point where we'd rather blast deafening music in our ears than listen to the loudness and the rudeness and the crudeness of everyone around us. People. I forgot how much worse it was to add people into the equation. You keep your head down just so you don't slip because it's so easy for you to slip into anxiety attack mode. It's so easy for reality to start fading and your palms become sweaty and you can't hear anything except the thoughts in your head, but at the same time, it feels like the world around you is suddenly so deafening and so big that you've become lost. I've retreated into the bathroom of my school more times than I can count. You go into the bathroom and your breathing is heavy, your ears are ringing, your thoughts are racing, your heart is literally trying to escape from your chest. You lock yourself in a stall and lean against it. You could either look down at your sweaty palms or close your eyes altogether. You count back from 10. Okay, 10, 9, 8. Girls are talking. Start over. 10, 9, 8, 7. Security has yelled at them to get out and get back to class. You can hear admin's walkie-talkies going off. Start over. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're okay. That would have just been in the space of an hour out of my day. See, anxiety is constant panic, it's constant dread, it's walking into the cafeteria hungry, standing there frozen, and taking in the overwhelming amount of kids, and turning around to go eat a snack in the bathroom with your headphones in. It's not asking question in class because you sound so stupid. It's not wearing an outfit that you feel amazing in because everyone would think you're ridiculous. It's not talking too much because everyone thinks you're annoying. It's staying inside instead of going out because anything could happen. And even when you do go out, the worst thing that could happen to you is actually finding something you want to purchase in a store because there's no way your anxiety is going to let you interact with the cashier. It's needing to know 3 weeks in advance every single detail about an upcoming party, event, or small get-together. What will it be like? Who will be there? What are you wearing? What should I wear? Who will I cling to the side of so I don't have to directly start a conversation with someone and make an idiot out of myself? It's thinking everyone in the room is always staring at you because you're the bug under the magnifying glass that never burns because it's all in your head. I have been fortunate enough to be able to cope so much better the past year and a half after changing my schedule and lifestyle. It has taken me so much to get to where I am. Kids go through this every day, and so many of the kids that have endured this type of anxiety or panic disorder have transferred to Clearway where they feel safe. But I'm going to let them tell you what Clearway means to them and how it has changed their lives. I'm going to start off by quoting the students who unfortunately could not be here tonight. This is from Madison Damari, who graduated a year early with the help of all of her teachers and staff at Clearway. Clearway is an amazing school. I transferred there because I was being bullied at South, and I am not comfortable in big crowds because of my social anxiety. Every teacher at Clearway was not just an amazing teacher, but also a friend. And they were all amazing people in their own ways. I graduated a year early, and they helped me do it all. They help everyone. They help you with your work so much and have one-on-one conversations and contact with their students. They give you the choice of making up work that you have missed 45 minutes before school and 45 minutes after. I would have dropped out of school if it weren't for Clearway. They didn't just help me academically, they also helped me in my personal life, and I love them and everyone there for it. The next quote is from Kira Orion, a grade 11 student at Clearway. I transferred to Clearway because South was too intense for me. I have anxiety, and the smaller classrooms and shorter class periods help me stay focused and not feel trapped. Clearway is a really good school, and for most kids, they can't make it in regular schooling. They need the extra help and attention that the teachers and staff at Clearway give us. This quote is from Sheila Reardon, a grade 12 student at Clearway. Public schools have almost made me feel down. I felt like it was all a giant competition of who can get to the top faster, and I can't rush, it's not my way. I'm not a fast-paced person, I get overwhelmed way too easily, especially even just learning. Too much noise while I'm trying to do something, or too many people talking to me makes me shut down, and my heart starts racing. I went to Clearway to help this. The teachers there make you feel like actual people. They care about not making you feel inferior to them. There's never any issues there. All the kids respect the teachers enough to keep their drama out of the school, and that much says something about the school and all of the great people in it. Clearway has made me realize that school doesn't have to feel like dragging yourself to work every day. I can actually wake up and not feel horrible about going to school. I don't feel bad about how fast or slow I work or how slow I learn. I don't try to compete with anyone or reach anyone's expectations there because I know there isn't any. That school has turned so many of us kids' lives around. I'm so proud of my class of 2017, and thanks to Clearway, I get to graduate alongside them, because without them, I wouldn't be. I'm so thankful for that school because I definitely wouldn't be where I am right now. This is another quote from Sarah Pelletier. I would not be graduating this year if it weren't for Clearway giving me a second chance. I would have dropped out of school. I transferred to Clearway because I had very bad anxiety walking through the halls when there were so many people. I couldn't stay in class because the class was so big and there were so many kids in there. I had panic attacks every day. I was failing half of my classes because I couldn't stay in. After I transferred to Clearway, I was able to bring my grades up because there was only about 8 kids in my class and it was spread out. I'm actually going to pass this year because of Clearway. This last quote is from a grade 10 student named Kaylin Ellard. Clearway has helped me so much because I have anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder, which makes it hard for me to function normally in public school. Clearway is small, and the teachers are more understanding. They do things at a pace that doesn't overwhelm or stress me out. While I have been bullied in my past, we are all there to learn, so we all tried our best to respect each other. Clearway gave us a second chance, and we can't afford to have it taken away from us. I used to feel like there was no hope for me, that I wasn't going to graduate. For once, I have so much hope, and I feel happy to go to school. Thank you for your time and attention.
Let me say you speak very well and do a very good job making your point.
Thank you.
Very good. Next, we have Martin Legay.
Good evening. Martin Legay, 35 Greatstone Drive, Merrimack. I'm a member of the Nashua North Culinary Arts Advisory Board. I'm here this evening to voice concern with an item in the proposed 2017-2018 budget. We have learned that the proposed budget has the culinary arts program reducing to 1 teacher. Based on the tenure rule, this would automatically mean the elimination of David Quimby. All of the current advisory board members have already sent letters of opposition to the Board of Education. This evening, I would like to read a statement on behalf of the Complete Culinary Arts Advisory Board. We as the Culinary Arts Advisory Board appreciate the time given to us to present our thoughts on the elimination of 1 culinary instructor at Nashua North. Knowing that this is a financial decision, our goal is to demonstrate what the school district's return on investment is through the values and accomplishments of what Chef Quimby has set forth, and what the future of the culinary arts program would be if he were dismissed. Let's begin with the values he possesses: integrity, honesty, leadership, professionalism, true mentor, and properly prepares students for the workplace. His accomplishments: he's led an American Culinary Federation accreditation steering committee. Nashua High School is the only high school in the state with this accreditation. He was nominated 3 years ago to serve on the American Culinary Federation Education Foundation Accrediting Commission that travels throughout the United States accrediting high school culinary programs. He's instituted industry standard cash controls, cash out procedures, and a camera monitoring system, which is virtually eliminating any missing cash within the program. He has an extreme strong culinary and bacon written curriculum reviewed by industry professionals, providing all students with the opportunity to be successful. He's evolved the program here from a training program to an inclusive teaching program where we are focused on allowing all students to be successful and have the opportunity to succeed. Started taking our students to compete in Skills USA and has hosted the state commercial baking competition at Nashua High School North for 7 years. Our students regularly place top in the state. He started a Bake Shop Student Education Fund, a scholarship fund benefiting students who are continuing their education in culinary arts. He gives out scholarships annually and has raised over $20,000. Started an after-school cooking club, the Epicurious Club. Takes students each year to Nashua Country Club, where they participate in creating a course for the past, present, and future chef's dinner, a dinner that benefits our scholarship fund and gives students some real-world experience. He's developed a strong advisory team with various stakeholders in industry, business, and education. This is just a quick snapshot of what we know Chef Quimby has brought to the program since his arrival. There's much more he has done, but it would be too lengthy to list in this forum. Let's talk about how we see the program if Chef Quimby was no longer involved in the future. The ACF accreditation would be lost. We would revert back to a training program. Any extracurricular activity that Chef Quimby was involved in would expire. Cost controls would falter. This would also include daily cost of goods exceeding the budget. The advisory committee would be in disarray. Enrollment would drop lower than now, ultimately leading to the total demise of a great program. As the advisory board, we want this program to succeed. It helps feed our industry with qualified candidates. It's understood that enrollment is down. An important question is, how can we as a board assist drive the enrollment up? That could be our focus for next year. We may not have all the answers immediately. However, when our board gets together and begins to have outside-the-box dialogue, great ideas are born. As a future goal, we'd also like to address how the current tenure system works and is there opportunities for amending this system. We, as a united board, do hope you will consider our recommendations. Respectively submitted, the Nashua High School Culinary Arts Advisory Board.
Thank you. Mr. Hollowell's here, and he's going to take it. But if it would be all right, could we have a copy? Would you be willing to share that? And Sarah, would you have a copy of your comments? Would you be willing to share for our clerk, our secretary?
Apologize for arriving late. My best of intentions to get out of work on time, but did not work out. Jason? I'd say your last name, but your writing gets smaller and smaller as it goes through your name, so.
Sorry. Jason Jetty, 7 Crosswoods Path Boulevard, Merrimack. Good evening, everyone. I am writing on behalf of the Nashua High North Culinary Arts Program. I'm currently a member of the advisory committee and also a former student of the program graduating in 2006. I've known David for about 13 years, which is before he was involved in the program. Having met David through being a junior member of the local ACF chapter, David began to mentor me from the moment we met and has continued to provide teachings through me throughout the years and in my current career. He was honest with me from the start, letting me know what working in this field truly entails, but informing me how working in this specific field helped shape him into the person he is today, and the life lessons he's learned along the way, and how he brings that into his current teachings. David's always been someone for me to lean on throughout high school, my college years, and now my professional life. I've seen David provide the same real-life experience and advice to his students that he teaches today. Having been asked to be a member of the advisory committee, I've seen the program grow over the past 8 years since David has been involved. Prior to Chef Quimby being involved in the program, I would say the program was weak. It wasn't an educational forum. It was more about, we need to get private functions out and worry about serving lunch in the North Star Cafe. David has brought a different concept and approach into the culinary arts program by providing classroom time for students, agendas and teachings for each week, month, hands-on demos by himself and local chefs in the field. The improvements that have been made in the curriculum, learning courses, and in the classroom are vastly stronger than they were during my time in the program. I could honestly say that I wish I had the same education taught to me during my time in high school as David teaches to his students today. Over 8 years, David has been an educator in the school system. He has always had the drive to continuously improve the program and what he teaches to his students. David continues to lead the charge of keeping the program ACF certified by following their curriculum and aligning it with the district's curriculum. That is not all he does. He coaches and leads students in Skills USA competition, Kickstart, organizes and is the leader of the Culinary Arts Advisory Committee, board member of the local ACF chapter, a member of the past, present, and future Chef's Dinner hosted at the Nashua Country Club, and is a certified teacher and instructor for ServSafe certification. I'm not just writing this letter to you as in regards to the culinary arts program, but as an employer in the industry. The teachings and life lessons that David provides to his students are what we as employers look for today in our workforce. Thank you.
Diane, sorry.
Want to get his note? His comment?
Oh, yeah, if you have a copy of that, sorry, should have caught you before you sat down. I wasn't listening to Mrs. Ziem. Jay, Mr. Farrington there. Thank you. Diane, name and address for the record, please.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Diane Williams. I live at 15 Carson Circle in Nashua. I've lived there for 33 years. I come to you as a taxpayer and a 20-year veteran teacher in the Nashua school system. I think I need to tell you that my concern is for the cutting of the proposed cutting of the 2 peer coach positions, Diane and Paula. I've been compelled to write you all today, as well as come and talk to you, because I think you have to know that both of these excellent teachers are tireless and selfless. And because of that, they're not self-promoters. So some of you probably have never even heard of them. And that's sad because they have given so much to our children and to the teachers and to the community. I can only tell you that you owe it to the children of Nashua, as well as the teachers, to review what I view as probably a short-sighted proposal, and that you need to inquire deeply into the benefits that these 2 individuals provide. I think you need to listen to those of us who know them and know their work, and were involved in their cohorts and profited from their exceptional mentoring and coaching. These 2 coaches provide priceless education to new and veteran teachers in a confidential and honest manner. Their tireless efforts include coming into classrooms, carefully observing, and most important of all, offering follow-up meetings and constructive feedback. Nashua's children benefited from improved classroom instruction, classroom management, and more confident teachers striving at their profession to become a better teacher, and thus remaining in Nashua, feeling confident. I retired from my position as a Title I teacher at Mount Pleasant just this past June, after 40 years being an educator. I worked within numerous classrooms where the classroom teacher was challenged by behavior issues, curriculum questions, and management challenges. Diane and Paula provided a unique service to teachers, and I always applauded the fact that Nashua had the insight to offer this. I've taught in 7 states, so I have a broad perspective on education, and a long one. Teachers wanted to be honest about their struggles, and they were seeking help without any kind of repercussions. They received this from Diane and Paula, who were purely interested in this individual's growth as a professional educator. I also joined the cohorts for several years as part of my professional development. These are monthly meetings that were well thought out and prepared by both Paula and Diane. I looked forward to the recent research they presented, the videos, and the stimulating conversations and exchange of ideas. I enjoyed hearing from teachers what they were doing across grade levels and curriculum areas. I was meeting with people all the way from K through 12 at all different grade levels, art, music, culinary arts, everybody, so that you had a broad perspective of what was going on in Nashua. And every time I left, I always felt hopeful, because what I heard were motivated teachers with new techniques and information and colleagues to collaborate with. This was the venue that they provided us. Through these sessions, Paula and Diane connected and motivated teachers to become a better self, a better teacher, a better citizen. We felt we were a family of Nashua teachers, all for the common goal of our children. I urge you to think about the far-reaching positive impact of Diane and Paula to the teachers and children in Nashua. You're entrusted to do the best for our city's children and teachers. Don't allow this uninformed, short-sighted proposal and Diane and Paula's invaluable service to our city. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Diane, if you're willing to give up that copy, our secretary would be thrilled. Diane? If you're willing to give up that copy, or you could email it to us. Is that the same?
With all the, yeah.
Okay, we'll just take it from the email then.
A couple of other notes you can have.
Okay. Nothing personal, no. All right, Pat Snow.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Pat Snow, 17 Merrimack Street. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you this evening. I'm here tonight to talk about the Nashua School District goal, and that is all students read by 3rd grade. And in order to do that, we need effective teachers, a viable curriculum, sound pedagogy, and methodology. If we do not have our peer coaches, not only our new to district teachers, but our veteran teachers will not have the support to grow in their own learning. So I urge this board to look at this proposal and to really think about our peer coaches, because Nashua's future depends on the work that Paula and Diane do. Marzano talks about the way to have students grow in their learning is by giving effective feedback. Paula and Diane give our teachers feedback. I talked to all our new teachers at Mount Pleasant, and I said, describe the work that you do with the peer coaches. They said, they give me feedback that I can use immediately in my classroom, and it makes a difference. It's knowledge about pedagogy, it's knowledge about methodology, and it's also doing this job of teaching that is so difficult and challenging. We have our EL students, we have our special education students, we have students that we should personalize our learning for every single student. And in order to do that, teachers need the tools. They need the curriculum, and they need the methodology and pedagogy. And I had the honor of working with Diane Vino as a peer coach, and I learned so much from this lady. I have a lot to be thankful for. So I hope you really open your minds and hearts and really support our future children and our educators, because more students and teachers will be coming to Nashua, and this program is known nationwide. So thank you for this time. Thank you.
Luan?
My name is Luann Genest. I live at 20 Sherwood Drive, and I am a fifth grade teacher at Sunset. I'm just going to read this. So over the years, I've seen many budget cuts to staff, programs, curriculum, but this year, the cut of the two-peer coaching position has rocked us as a teaching community. The impact of this cut will be felt district-wide, and our students will be impacted the most. Paula and Diane's frequent visits to classrooms of all teachers during their first 3 years of teaching their teaching careers provide support in the sharing of research-based best practices. Taking the theories that are taught in college classrooms and applying them to a real-life classroom situation can be daunting. Diane and Paula stand alongside new teachers, reassuring them and providing them with the strategies to best meet the needs of their students. They help retain teachers, which is one of our goals. A district that provides a coaching and mentoring program attracts new teachers. Teaching candidates often ask the interview team, which I've been a part of, if they will be provided with a coach or a mentor. Diane and Paula help attract new teachers by the virtue of their roles in this district, another one of our goals. They support veteran teachers like me. There have been occasions when I have called upon them for advice in trying to fine-tune my teaching strategies to best meet the needs of a very diverse group of learners. Everything I've mentioned impacts kids. If a new teacher does not get the support needed to be successful, student growth will be impacted. One of my biggest concerns was that HR was referred to as the department that will take on the roles of Paula and Diane. Is our HR department qualified to coach new teachers? Will HR personnel be coming into our classrooms to support us, to observe us? Do they have the knowledge of the K-12 standards and best practices? Will new teachers feel that they can openly discuss challenges when HR is where you go when you're not renewed? I'm concerned that the professional development model that Nashua uses will no longer be viable. Diane and Paula facilitate cohorts for new and veteran teachers as part of our certification process. In year 2 of our certification cycle, they facilitate a peer review. Who will be doing this if their positions are eliminated? It truly is my belief that the impact of the elimination of these 2 positions was not fully understood when the budget was presented. We are asking you to reinstate these 2 positions for our kids, our new teachers, and those of us who still need support during these very challenging times in education. Thank you.
Luan, I'm going to ask you the same thing. You okay giving up that, or you could email it to us, because I'm assuming you have it electronically? You can just hand that to Mr. Farrington there. Thank you.
Thanks.
Sheila?
Good evening. Sorry, it's a little loud.
Name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Sheila Dunbar Marcoux. I live at 455 Blodgett Street in Manchester. I'm the technology integrator at Elm Street. This is my 9th year teaching, my 5th year in the district. I'm going to read my email that I sent to the board, so you already have it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you to Mr. Farrington and Ms. Oden and Dr. Brown for responding to my email. I was previously a special education teacher and case manager in a very small school district. As a technology integrator at Elm Street, I interact with all teachers, staff members, and students. I also support Dr. Crisp in Sunset Elementary Schools. I ask you to reconsider your decision to cut the peer coaches. I see the difference every single day that Diane and Paula make in our schools. I am so confused as to why the peer coaches would be cut, but the superintendent's priority for the district is to hire and retain good teachers. I came to Nashua because I knew they had a successful teacher mentor program, which has been nationally recognized. You can't retain teachers if you don't support them with mentors that they can trust. The reason why our model works is because Diane and Paula are teachers, not HR personnel or administrators. When either mentor visits my classroom, I know that by the end of the day, I will be a better teacher and my students are the ultimate benefactors. I can say that without a doubt, they got me through my first years in the district. Mike can vouch for this. Because I struggled my first year, I expected students to do what I asked them in the classroom. I didn't realize that doesn't happen. They don't teach you that. They don't teach you that in college and teacher prep programs. If it wasn't for them, I would have quit, like many new teachers do in their first 5 years. Teachers walk on eggshells their first 5 years because they can be non-renewed without cause. Teacher preparation programs in college do not prepare you for the challenges of teaching students with non-academic needs that our students have. I'm glad Diana and Paula were there to support me in doing the important work of connecting with and supporting students. This is what they do. They teach you how to connect with students so that the students can learn. That cannot be taught in college. It must be learned in the trenches with trust, support, and constructive, straightforward criticism. Diane and Paula continue to mentor me and many others. I owe them a debt I can never repay. Our students deserve to have great teachers who have supportive mentors like Diane and Paula. Additionally, how can human resources possibly take over these two positions when they are already overwhelmed and short-handed? And they're not teachers. That would be like me trying to tell a surgeon how to perform surgery. Diane also spent countless hours with me to complete the arduous process of Alternative 4 certification for technology integration. Without her efficient expertise and patience, it would have taken a lot longer than it did. Diane and Paula also handle the peer share process for recertification for all district teachers. Who in HR is going to handle that? The monthly cohort meetings that Diane and Paula facilitate are invaluable. They make me think deeply and reflect on my teaching methods, as well as my interactions with students and colleagues. By cutting these positions, you will be decimating the quality of education in our district. Please reconsider this decision. And the bottom line is that the students will be affected, not just the teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann?
Ann Bose, 3 Gettysburg Drive, Nashua. I'm a recent retiree of school nursing at Mount Pleasant, and I'm also a member of the King's Daughters who support Clearway. And as we've heard tonight, it is a tremendous, encouraging environment for children to learn who have a difficult time. And the King's Daughters do all the we pay for all the repairs of the building, and we really support the needs of the needy in Nashua. And please don't put at risk the future of Clearway. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. So that's all I had that was signed up. Is there anybody who feels that something wasn't said that they'd like to share? I'll give you an opportunity. Okay, thank you. So I just want to let people know, couple things. The way this budget process works, so the superintendent proposes a budget. We then listen for a few meetings where they we go through each program. Tonight is SPED and ELL. And then round about the third week of February, we'll be taking the superintendent's budget, and then the board will start to make motions. So I guess what I'm saying is, it's not like something's going to happen tonight where some motion's going to be made and your concerns will be allayed, but that doesn't mean it won't happen, right? So I just want people to understand the process. Someone mentioned about thinking that somebody responded. I can tell you on two of these issues, on the peer coaches and on the Chef Quimby, we've gotten lots of emails, right? And I know every board member here has read every one, so I don't want you to think that we haven't. When we typically get these, either myself as the budget chair or Mr. Farrington will typically respond for the board. So it's not that other members don't care enough to respond, it's just like, that's our point of contact, right? To let you know that we got it and we read it. It gets in our packet every week, who's sent us emails. So we've all read them, and I think we've all been educated by them. I've gotten a number of very eloquent letters and a lot of stuff about, what they do on a personal basis, and in particular for the peer coaches, and even Mr. Quimby. So, I mean, it does get through to the board. I appreciate that people gave us the input, and we'll see where it goes from there. I'm going to take just a 5-minute break, because I don't think you probably all want to stay here for the SPED and the ELL discussion, so why don't we just take a 5-minute break, and we can stand up, and you guys can leave if you want to, and then we'll carry on.
administrator has a PowerPoint if they wish to
Okay,
answer
good.
questions.
Good.
Chris wants to speak to this packet, which, please.
This packet? All right, special education. Ms. Green, and whoever you'd like to bring with you. Need anyone else?
No, I think I'm all set. If I need them, they're right there.
Ms. Breen, if they're not going to come up, you're still going to have to embarrass them by introducing them, just because they showed up tonight, so.
Why don't you stand and introduce yourselves? Kim?
How about you say their
Oh,
names?
Kim
because-
Craffey, Assistant Director of Special Ed. Grace Liberty, Out-of-District Coordinator. Marsha Bagley, Assistant Director of Special Ed. And Jess Wojcik, who is the Preschool Coordinator.
All right. You have the floor.
And I am Christine Breen, the Director of Special Education. So I'm here tonight to go over our budget. I have 5 documents that I'm going to focus on this evening. I'm going to give you a quick overview of special education. Currently, we have about 1,900 students that are identified, ages 3 to 21. These students are in a general special education setting. Some are in preschools, intensive needs programs, project achievement classrooms, which are our behavior classrooms, and out-of-district placements. The percentage of students identified in Nashua is about 16%, and this goes in line with the state average. Nashua is known throughout the state to offer high-quality special education services delivered by highly competent and committed staff. Many families choose to live in Nashua because they know their children will be well-educated and that requirements under IDEA and Nashua rules will be followed. Several students with significant educational and medical needs, some medically fragile, are educated within our schools. The first document I'd like to have you take a look at is the document that has school profiles, and it's a 5-page document. It has a listing of each school in the district.
One in the upper right corner that has 6 AIL-2, is that correct? Is it this one?
It's in a grid.
Oh, nope, it's not that one.
Was it handed out this evening?
6AIII-IV, and this is really interesting numbering you've got here, Mr.
No, it's on my number.
Those aren't yours. I'm shocked. So, this one. Yes. It's in the packet that you get tonight. And it's the only one that starts with a grid, so.
So this document is a listing of all of our special education staffing throughout the district. As you know, some of our schools have preschool classrooms, some have intensive need programs, and some have behavior programs, which you'll see listed as project achievement. These programs service students throughout the district. You will see case managers listed, and case managers are at each school, and they work with identified students, mostly from the school neighborhood. The number of case managers is listed as well. Services for our general special education students that are delivered by the case managers happen in small group settings in the schools and sometimes in classrooms. Where it says FTE, that means full-time equivalents, and that's the number of, the ratio or the times that the students, the staff is in the building. So the FTEs describe paraeducators, speech-language pathologists, and school psychologists, and how they are stationed at different schools, and it's based obviously on need and programs. Some of the intensive needs programs need more related services, so you'll see that number reflected. So there's a lot of information
Yeah, can we
there.
just go over that again, just to make sure I have it correctly? So if I take Amherst Street, the total population of the school is 351. That includes regular students and special ed students.
Correct,
Then if I look at intensive K to 5 medically fragile, you've got 6 paras,
correct,
0.6 speech language pathologists
correct,
that service those 6 students as part of that caseload, is that correct?
correct,
Okay, and then the psychologist in this case is shared, the half-time psychologist is shared among all of those students, right?
correct.
And then when you say case managers equals 5, meaning, say that again?
Those are the teachers that sort of the general special ed population. So those are students that aren't in intensive needs programs, but they are neighborhood students that have mostly learning disabilities. It could be other health impairments, but they're students that live in that that school area.
So the case manager is handling 68 students, it's not the number of, does the caseload add up to 68 here?
No, that caseload would be divided by those 5. Yes.
I'm sorry, thank you. What is the
So, wait, so caseload, if I add up 6, 11, 9, 22, and 20, I get 68, right?
Correct.
Okay, so it's not 68, I was asking, it's not 68
No.
other students?
No,
Okay.
correct.
Anybody else have any questions?
Well,
Mrs.
I'm
Zine?
sorry, the
I have it, I
SLP
don't see
stood
why we
for
can't
what?
move on now.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
Ms. O'Hensi?
A case manager, do they teach or they are just managing the students?
They do both. They are case managers, that's what we call them, but they manage the students' files, case words, compliant, caseload, and then their compliance, their testing, their IEPs, but they also deliver the services in the IEP.
Okay, thank you.
So they do both.
Do they get, is that just part of their regular workload and they have a regular teaching load, or do they get a reduction in their teaching load in order to be the
At the
caseload?
elementary level, the students, the teachers caseload and teach the students on their caseload. The high school, that changes a bit because the service delivery model isn't, the student isn't in the same location all day, so it's a little different in that.
Okay, any
that
other
area.
questions from the board? All right, Mr. Kaufman.
General question about the psychologists. 20-some in the district, am I correct? And they're distributed pretty much equally, about one in each school and several others in the high school to accommodate the larger.
Not necessarily. If we have district-wide programs, we need more school psychologists, so it depends on really what type of disabilities we're serving. So it's not one assigned per school. Some schools don't have an equivalent of one. Some schools might have 4 days.
So these resources, they move around to the need to
They
fulfill?
change every year. We take a look at, the team takes a look at the need, we take a look at where programs are located. We look at the service delivery model, and we work to provide that coverage, so it changes year to year.
Could you give me an example of what one of the school psychologists might be doing with someone in the general SPED population as compared to somebody with intensive needs?
So in a general special ed situation, they would certainly be doing some testing. They would be doing consulting with the teacher. They would be doing writing behavior plans. They would be working with agencies in outside areas to help, especially in the area of mental health. They would be developing behavior plans for students that are identified and non-identified.
Follow-up? So, I guess the breadth of what they do is quite extensive. These are these services required within the special education law?
Yes.
Okay.
They're in IEPs. A lot of the services are embedded right into the IEPs.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Zine?
My question might not be, this might not be the best time, but I have long, when you're 68 are identified, and I guess I'm concerned with how many are unidentified, and if we are indeed
servicing some who aren't identified, but who are borderline, or I don't know how you hear what I'm asking you.
Sorry, can I just clarify the question? So servicing in the sense of the school psychologist or in any sped services?
If, I would assume, and that's why I'm asking, because sometimes when you assume, you're not doing the right justice. I would assume that if there are students who are not identified, but who appear to have maybe lesser problems or different problems, then do you still use some of your resources for those students as well?
Yeah, we do as much as we can. We try to help students. We don't wait for a student to be identified to help. Just like when a student might need reading, we can do interventions without them being identified. So our school psychologists are often tapped on to help problem solve through the building, in the building when there's a problem, especially with behaviors, and we tap into their knowledge base. We don't wait till the student's identified for that to happen.
And do we, may I? And do we, looking forward, when I look back, it seems to me that special education needs are ever expanding. Is it the opinion of your leadership team that indeed this will continue to be a...
The trend is upward in our identified students, and that is following suit with the state as well. Our number of younger students that are being identified, preschool students, students that are age 3, that has been on the increase. So those numbers are trending up.
Thank you.
All right, sorry, we derailed you there, so.
No, that, I want to take
On this-
questions after
on this-
each document, so that's fine.
Okay, on this document, Dr. Murtaki?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay,
We're talking about the set of documents, 6AI, 1 to 2, and then 3, 4, et cetera, right?
talking about this one.
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
at least I think so. Or-
We'll ask your
or am
question.
I?
Ask your
Yeah.
question, we'll find out.
The ones that I'm looking at look
That's a different document.
It's a different-
Let's let her get to that one before we
okay.
start asking questions. That would seem really unfair.
All right, all right.
All right, anybody else? Go ahead.
Okay, so the next document, and if anyone has any questions about anything that they see tonight, feel free to call me at any time, and I can answer further questions. The next document is the disability trend over time. What's that number, Dan? Yes, 6B.
B?
Yeah,
And it's
it is.
a colored bar graph.
Probably already in the notebook.
Yeah. 6B.
6B,
Oh, I was in 7.
and this shows our trend, and this might answer your question, Mrs. Ziem, about how we're trending up. So this goes over 2012, 13, up until current. And I believe there was about 140 student difference between identified and non-identified from 2012 to now. That's ever changing, that number, so we might have some other students identified tomorrow, we might have a few come off, but it's about 140 student increase over the last 5 years. You'll also see that we have our highest disability, which is very typical, is the specific learning disability. That's the most prevalent. That category has decreased over the last 5 years.
Which category was that?
Special ed, learning disabled students. And I think that is due to a lot of the interventions that are in place at the elementary school level. I think that we have been seeing students prior to identifying them, so that learning disability identification has gone down. And I believe that's one of the reasons why that might have happened. We do have increases in autism, we do have increases in developmentally delayed, and that once again follows suit with the state. Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Almost lost the microphone. Sorry about that. At what age do, you mentioned the 3 years old, that you're seeing some, I guess, how early do some kids get IEPs that would, or all these people, is it fair to say everybody here has an IEP?
Yes. Yes.
And typically, kids get identified with different needs at different times, and you may work on one and then another one surfaces and you address it? Okay.
Bree, you want to just describe how we get notified about students that are 3 years old? They're obviously not in school, just that
So
process.
we do have agencies outside that work with families. We have local agencies that might have an idea that the student should be evaluated. We have parents that, just being around other parents, may make a suggestion, why don't you call the school district, if the student isn't talking or might not be crawling or walking. So right now, they've changed the law this year, I believe, so we have to begin evaluation at 28 months old. Between 28 months and 32 months. So that has changed our preschool population a bit, because we used to wait till they're 3 for the referral to come in. Last year that changed, so now we have students that are not 3, so they're just past their 2.5-year birth date. Then they get referred, and many of these students do get an IEP. They begin school on their 3rd birthday or shortly after that.
And when you say we changed it,
The
we didn't change
federal-
it.
the federal-
government
yeah,
changed it.
federal
So it's a
government changed it.
requirement that
It's a requirement.
do these
Yeah.
surveys.
So that number that has attributed to some of the increase in preschool, because as students turn 3, they begin school, and then they stay. Some students stay in preschool when they're just turning 3, and then they stay in when they're 3.5, and they stay in until they go to kindergarten. So we get some preschool students for 3 years, even though they start at 3. And so that really has attributed to some of that increase we've seen in the preschool classrooms.
Follow up, Mr. Coffey?
Yeah, thanks. I just looking at some of the reactions on some of the faces, that was certainly a large surprise to me to realize that we're evaluating young folks at 28 months
Yes.
old. And I would just say that there are no other social service agencies that can do this kind of testing or evaluation,
By law, we're required.
that the school system is
By
required.
federal law, we're required.
Do you have an estimate, forgive me, okay. Do you have any estimate on what the cost is for doing the evaluations for such young people that aren't normally within our school population?
It's our staff that's assigned to the preschools that do that, so I don't have a way to cost that out.
Well, in some way, if we know the staffing at those schools, so we would, or at least for that grade or
Well,
category.
we could try to figure that out. We
I'm
could-
just curious if there's a way to get financial relief for that service that's really non-educational. To me, I think of educational as education delivery. The evaluation, couldn't that be done by the private sector and not
School
by the
district's
school?
responsibility to do the evaluation and then determine if the student is eligible for special education.
And all the funds are through, is that the title, which grant is that?
IDEA grant,
IDEA grant.
under the law to protect students with disabilities.
Taken to an extreme, you could, all right, since our preschool exists to service these students, not that it doesn't include companion students that are regular ed, if you wanted to take the extreme, you could say the entire cost of preschool is a special ed for under kindergarten age students.
But we do have some of our staff that services preschool service other areas. Some aren't just
Okay, that's why I was saying, you could
allocated.
take it to the extreme, right? You
Yeah.
could just say that that's
Yes.
what it is. But the bottom line is, there isn't anything we can do about it, so I guess I'd like you to expound on, is it better that we have preschool programs for these students, that we get them earlier, or not?
It is a benefit. They get language, they get socialization, and many of these students are coming from homes and in situations where they really need some support and services. And so the families do as well. And it helps prepare the students as they enter kindergarten. The goal is intensive services when they're younger and joining their typical peers when they're first grade, ready to learn.
So I guess I would say if we eliminated that preschool program, we'd probably need significantly more staff at the kindergarten and first grade level because those students wouldn't have been merged into the
And it
program.
we would still have to educate the students with disabilities that are 3. So you couldn't, if you eliminated the preschool, we would still have to tuition them into a preschool or find a way to educate them. And it might be more expensive to
Okay.
do that.
Thank you. Mr. Farrington?
Yeah, just so I understand a little better, when looking at the preschool, let me see what you call it, the caseload, is it one typical student for one special needs student? And when the caseload shows 13, is that 13 special needs
Those are all,
kids?
good question. Those are all special ed students. We didn't include typical peers that tuition in these numbers. These are identified students.
And so would there be an equal number of typical students? Is it generally,
It's
One o-
5, I believe it's 5 typical students typical peers are integrated into each of the
Oh, okay.
classrooms.
Okay.
Is that the number, Jess? 5? Yeah.
right, thank you.
Dr. Murataki, Mrs. Ziem, and then Ms. Hohensie.
Thank you. This is actually kind of like a follow-up on Mr. Kaufman's question, but before I ask the question, just for Mr. Kaufman's edification, the special education program legislation are centered in 2 acts. One of them is the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and then that was followed on by the IDEIA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act. That was the act that expanded the IDEA and opened up the possibility of doing things like 504s. Within the IDEA, and the IDEIA is also funded with the IDEA funding mechanism, the the indication in the funding line for IDEA says that the federal government can fund up to 40%, the state up to 30% of these costs, but that we are the stuckees. The local education agency shall fund the program. So no matter how much or how little we get from the federal government, and I don't think we've exceeded more than 18% of the possible 40 in all the years I've been here. The state, can pay up to 30%, but they usually short sheet us as well. So we are stuck with one of the most notorious unfunded mandates in the federal government that we know of. So that's just for information purposes. So here's my question. When the federal government expanded this mandate, did they send more money?
I don't believe so.
Thought not. Thank you very much.
Sounds a lot like the New Hampshire pension system.
On steroids.
The legislature was responsible for that, so. Ms. Breen, anybody? Oh, sorry, I've got Mrs. Ziem, Ms. Hohensie.
We've been talking about the youngest end of the spectrum. I would like to just have an overview of the 18 to 21. Do we have a lot of special education students who fall in that 18, 19, 20, 21?
We have them at the high school in the intensive needs programs typically, and we probably have 10 to 12, I would say right now, that are over, and that I can get you a better number than.
So do they have, may I follow up? Do
Yes.
they have a special, so do these 8 to 10, do they meet together and
They're in the
have a-
intensive needs programs,
Do
many
they
of
have a
them.
one-on-one?
Most of them do, and they stay, they do life skills, they do cooking, they do community work, so they're getting them prepared for life after 21. So
Yes.
they're doing real hands-on experience.
Thank you. And can I, one final question, and you may not be able to answer this tonight, maybe it's in the book and I didn't pick up on it. The total cost of special education to the Nashville School District?
Right now, it's at $11 million.
And that includes the grants, everything?
The grant's $3 million,
3 million more?
yes.
And Title I and all, is there more money in Title I and in those?
Title I wouldn't be allocated
Any
to
of-
us.
so
But
none
there
of-
is Title I funds, I'm not sure.
So can I just, so 6G, which got handed out tonight. So I'm just trying to match up with your number. So for FY16, it says special ed expenditures a little over $30 million.
Oh, that includes benefits,
Does that include busing?
Total cost, maybe.
The 30 million number comes from the DOE 25, so that includes all the costs. It includes any special program costs related to grants, it includes the benefits, includes everything. I think Chris may have been speaking more to the operating budget without all the
My
extras.
operating budget, what I
Okay.
had.
I just didn't know what Mrs. Zeem's question was, total or operating budget?
It was actually total, but the other was also helpful, so thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Hollowell.
Are you all set, Mrs. Zeem?
Yes.
Ms. O'Hensy?
Thank you. I'm trying to figure out, there's 5 schools that have preschool, and they're not the Title I schools. Do all 12 elementary, on your list that's listed, do all of them have preschool?
So the Title I preschool is different than the special ed preschool. So these are special education preschools, and they're housed not necessarily in a Title I school. They can be housed any place in the district.
Okay, so Ledge Street, for instance, doesn't have any special ed listed here.
They don't have any programs. They don't have a preschool, they don't have any district-wide programs.
Okay. So how many schools have just preschool?
We have right now 15 preschools split up in 7 different schools, just? 5 different schools.
And the high school?
In the high school Purple Panther.
And then, isn't there some at the bottom of the church?
And that's the Title I.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Martucci, so I'm going to go to Mrs. Oden. Mrs. Oden, yep, Mrs. Oden.
Thank you. Just to follow up on a question Mrs. Zeem asked, you said we have 10 to 12 students in the 18 to 21 age bracket. Are those 10 to 12 students in one high school, or is that program divided to each high school?
They're both programs.
Both?
Yeah. And they're not necessarily in the intensive needs. Most of them are in the intensive needs programs.
Okay, okay.
And that might be high. I'm not sure if do you think it's around 10 students then 18 to 21? Yeah, it could be.
But it's at both high schools?
Both
We
high
have
schools,
students-
yes. It
Thank you.
depends where the student is going to school.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Martucci and then Mr. Kaufman.
Yes, thank you very much. So corresponding to the special ed expenditures of about $30 million, where is the corresponding data for the income, including federal and state contributions?
Mr.
Is that in here somewhere?
No, it's not in anything that you have right now. I can certainly get it for you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. I'm curious, a program like Brentwood program, is that considered special education? Is that under your purview?
We have special education students there, yes.
So you might place some of your students in the Brentwood program?
Correct.
But Brentwood is not a program that is overseen or managed by you folks?
Well, it is, it is. Ellen
It's in
works-
your umbrella?
Yes, it is.
As it is,
Yeah.
okay. And that's in this overall 30 million?
Yes.
It's all rolled into
Yes.
there?
Those are our special ed students.
Okay, thank you.
So, 2 questions. I didn't see it in the list of things, so that might be my fault. I thought we used to get a special ed breakdown also by grade as to how many there were. I might look back at last year's, I don't know. And I'll look and see if I can find it. I think it just told us how many by grade, so it would.
Yeah,
would
we
tell us
have
how
that
many.
information. I don't have it with me tonight, but we do have that.
Yeah, okay.
It-
And then, I guess, if I look at this chart that you started out with, which was the special education students by primary disability, if I look down that list of disabilities, once we identify somebody with one of those disabilities, are there any on that list that services go away over time?
Yes, we do. We have several students, and that's always our goal. And we have some students that have conditions that will not go away. And so what we try to do is build in as much support as we can give, fade off support as the student gets older. Our ultimate goal is to make someone independent as an adult. And so we do fade services away if we can. Some disabilities lend itself more to that. If a student has a specific learning disability in reading, many students, we can break that code with extensive support. By the time they leave elementary school, we have students that we can discharge from special education. So that's always our goal.
I'm just looking at opportunities. If there was an investment that could be made in those students that we know we can reduce the services that we need, it'd be interesting to know, like, if we could speed up that process. Maybe we're doing everything we can, but it would just be, I'm always a big fan of spending money to save money later. So I don't know whether there's any thought. I don't want you to answer the question now, but that might be an interesting thing to look at. And I know we've looked at that kind of thing in the past, so maybe we're doing everything we can. I've got Mr. Kaufman and Dr. Murataki.
Thank you. On the bottom of 6G, we have a color chart, and the note at the bottom says special programs include...
Can I suggest that you're gonna talk about, are you gonna talk about this form tonight?
Okay, Dan has some that are more in his area than mine, so we can certainly
Okay,
answer
you had
that
said you had
question.
5 documents. I just wanted to make
That's
sure
not one
this
of
was...
mine.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, we referred to this page. It says at the bottom, note, special programs include special education, ELL, kind of know what both of those are. But I wanted, if you would kindly, REACH. What is a REACH program?
So the REACH program was in place probably up until about 7 or 8 years ago. It was an accelerated program for students that met criteria for
Advanced
gifted,
learners.
like a gifted program.
Okay.
Yeah, and we no longer use that model.
And believe me, they are not the cost driver in this.
I just want
No, I know.
referral
I
to the
know.
name of a program I hadn't heard, so...
Yep. All
Does
right.
that, anything like that still exist?
No.
All right.
All right, the next
Sorry,
doc...
Dr. Murataki, you had
Oh, I'm
your hand up.
sorry.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope this is appropriate time. On 6B, the chart that identified what the various disabilities were, and there's a very nice, time series data that goes back to 2012 to 13. So my question is about the first line, autism. I'm very interested in this because I have, young relatives that are autistic. And one of the things I was concerned about a few years back, and I asked the board, should we be thinking strategically about this, is that nationally and in the state, and it appears here locally, year by year, there seems to be a steady increase of autistic children. This phenomenon is relatively well understood now. It actually has to do with the increasing age of fathers. And so the thing is, it does appear that you can definitely run a trend line that will predict 5 years from now how many autistic children this district will have. The percentage will go up, maybe the total population goes down, but should we be, as a board, should we be looking at trending things like this and actually go ahead and build this into a 3 or 5 year budgeting plan as well as just for this coming year? Because that is one of those things that's going to bite us. Year after year, we're going to end up paying more. And if the feds continue to add additional unfunded mandates, we're going to be, blowing our budget year after year.
And I think that's where we see some of our increase in preschool, because some of the students that are identified that are going to our preschools are autistic. So that's where some of that,
Right.
the students are going.
There was early debate as to whether or not the reporting percentage had gone up.
Correct.
The answer to some of that was yes, but there does appear to definitely be an upwards trend on autistic births year after year. So that's real. That's not a...
Yeah, I would agree.
Thank you.
Ms. Farrington?
Yeah, on the, excuse me, on that same chart, developmental delay, it shows a 44% increase over this 4-year span. Is that due to different criteria, different evaluations? Do you have any idea why?
Well, I think that once again goes to the preschool increase. So students that are often, they have many areas of challenge, and at age 2.5 or 3, it's very difficult to say what someone might have as a label, so we often use that as a catchment area. A lot of times these students eventually, some of them get discharged from special ed, some of them become speech and language impaired, some of them learning disabled, some of them autistic. So that tends to be it could be a higher pool because we were being more cautious.
Till you can refine
Right.
your evaluation. Okay, thank you.
So while we were talking, I did try to go back and find by grade, which I can't find, so I'm going to go ahead and ask. So for 2016-17, so for those numbers, using this same disability scale, could you provide preschool through 12th grade, the number of students in each grade? Is that possible? Now, I think I also remember this list is not, are there some students, I know multiple disabilities obviously has multiple disabilities, but are there some of these that are, it's not individual students, it's actually a student counts in two rows?
This is primary, so students have to
Primary,
have a
okay.
primary. Some of them do have 2 or 3, but this is the first identification.
Okay. Yeah, if we could do that, because I think that might be informative as to what the trend is over time, right?
So you'd like a breakdown per grade level, over time, trending over time?
Not over time, just the 2016-17.
Okay.
So what is it right now, right? So I could look and say, I've got 151 autistic students in first grade and second grade and third grade, that doesn't change over time, but
Okay.
maybe developmental delay would, right? Would go down over time, probably.
Okay,
Not over time, over grade,
over grades.
which is
Yeah.
kind of time, but it's
Kinda
not
time.
quite time. All right, anybody else on this? All right,
All right, we're going to skip to the preschool since we have been talking to the preschool population, so I'm going to go out of my order a
did you want to
little bit.
confer with your staff? I feel like they're ready to jump over and tell you something.
Am I not, am I?
You're the troublemaker, I'm not surprised.
So this one, I'm looking for the preschool class size, 119, 6D.
No, we just did 6.
David,
D.
David.
So it's green, blue. Guys, am I doing all right?
There might be in the future.
Okay, this bar graph shows preschool as of 1/19/17, so this is relatively updated.
Go ahead.
And we are requesting in the budget a new preschool classroom to be added for next year due to our increase in our referrals of special education. So as I said, students between the ages of 28 and 32 months are now being referred. Many of these children will be identified, and we will have to place these students in the next, month or two. So we can't identify someone and say, we'll have to wait for a space. We have to put them in a program within 30 days. So if you look at the chart right now, all of our 3- and 4-year-old programs are at or above state regulation, with the exception of the Signs of Learning program, which house our deaf and hard of hearing, and our Building Blocks program, which has our autism program. Right now, we have 38 students who are waiting for referral evaluation meetings. We have 38 3-year-olds and 4 4-year-olds waiting. Every day we get a phone call. Just about a day doesn't go by that we don't get a phone call requesting someone to take a look at their preschool student. Some of these students will need a program, and if you look at the chart, we have very few spaces that aren't at the state regulation of 12. So we are requesting another preschool program next year because we have, at least out of those 38 students, on a safe side, 25 students that we're going to have to place. And then on top of that, we have to provide speech-language services, OT services, and school psych services to meet their needs.
So given what you just said, if you add a classroom, it doesn't do anything to these classrooms, you're adding a classroom because we have additional students, right?
Yeah, we don't have,
So none of these will meet, by adding the classroom, you're not reducing any of
you're
these?
you're not even touching that.
Have you done
Now,
the
some of these students will age out next year and move on, but some of them won't. And we'll get a new pool of students.
Mr. Farrington?
If I recall correctly, we added a class last year, mid-year?
Yes,
or
we
in the
did. We
spring?
did mid-year, right around this time we did, yes.
Are we going to be able to get through this year without adding?
We're managing, where people are really doubling up. We're very, very close to being out of compliance for speech and language services. We've been being very creative, and people are stepping up every possible minute they have to deliver services. Classrooms as well, they're getting very crowded. We're managing, though. We're managing right now, but it's getting close.
If I could just follow up.
Sorry, I'm sorry, just
They say you're watching the
staff is
cases.
giving away that it's pretty somber.
Do you have a space identified that you would use for this?
We would have space in the district. There would be some space. There are classrooms that are vacant right now.
Even with other things that are proposed in the agenda, like kindergarten?
I believe there would be. Right now, there are some empty classrooms. We're just trying not to go to open a classroom mid-year. It's just very tough thing to do.
I understand it's in flux. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mrs. Eaton?
Mine's just to add on, when you're out of compliance, do they swoop in and beat us up, or what do they do?
Well, they don't swoop in and beat us up, but we're not getting students what we have agreed to in a IEP. So we made an agreement with parents that we are going to deliver services to your child, and so we're obligated to follow through on that IEP. So
are you telling me that the federal government, there's no penalty, there's no,
there would be a penalty because a parent would file a complaint and we would get audited. And there are regulations, there are people from the state, the DOA, that come down and check our compliance issues, do audits on a frequent basis.
I think Mrs. Eam is asking is, what is the,
Penalty.
if they do that and they find you're out of compliance, is there an actual penalty? Is there something we lose because that happens? Obviously, it's not good for the students, but I think
There's
she's asking
funding.
specifically.
Corrective action, you'd be put under corrective action.
and that
doesn't
is
help. What
what?
does that mean?
Thank you, Ms. Hollowell.
Nice word, but
They would come in and audit how we deliver services. They would come in and audit. We would have to do documentation on our services. It would be a very, very cumbersome process.
so they'd bury us
It
in
would be
paperwork.
costly as well.
And take away from the kids doing it.
Compensatory services if they find out if we don't. If we don't,
Compensatory, what does that mean?
parents will ask if their child has not received services through the IEP, they'll ask for compensation. So sometimes they would say, you need to pay an outside provider, you might have to hire someone to make sure that my student gets the service, you might have to pay for outside after-school services. to
Have
make
we ever
up.
done that
It's been done before.
in this district?
It has.
Thank you.
Mr. Kaufman?
If I remembered the same thing with Mr. Farrington, like we added another classroom, and I think I asked at that time, what is a classroom? And the first question is physical space, and if I recall correctly, that it's at least one teacher and at least one para.
Three paraeducators.
So when you ask for a classroom, it's one teacher, three paras, and possibly pieces and parts of other people, half of
We need
speech
another
pathology, or whatever,
SLP.
those things, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So it's not
And there would
a
be
room with
furniture.
several-
Yeah, it would be furniture, it would be equipment.
Okay.
Yep. And Dan has those numbers, and we work with Dan to put that into, knowing that that's part of the expense.
Just, do you know off the top of your head what that number is? $100,000? Thank you.
Just before we get out, so the other potential cost is if the parents don't feel like we're meeting their needs, they will ask to have some out-of-district placement for their student, right? So that's the potential cost that isn't really quite measurable, but perhaps a problem. And we wouldn't really have a strong argument if we're not meeting the IEP.
Well, no, and it sets a really, not a trusted relationship, so if it happens at a young age, you still might have some residual feelings down the road when the student gets older, when an out-of-district placement is a little bit more realistic.
Okay, Mr. Farrington?
Yeah, just quickly, I don't have it, I probably could find it, but, so is this additional classroom, is that in the proposed budget? So, okay.
Yep.
Ms. O'Hensy?
I'm sorry, as well as additional speech and language services.
Okay, I remember that. Yep.
Ms. O'Hensy?
So this chart, is this only the special needs, or are these the other students in it in two? Because,
These are only the special needs students.
so each preschool with special needs is 12 students, nobody else?
And then the typical peers come in, there's 5 students that, because by state law, you can't have special ed students standing alone in a classroom without typical peers, so we have to tuition kids in to be a part of that.
So typically, you'll have 12 in a class plus 5.
Yes.
So you've got 17 in a class.
What is it? Seven. Beyond that now. It's beyond. So that number includes the 5 students. Yep.
Okay, so this includes the 5 add-ons. Can you identify where each of these classes are? Like,
So,
Well, is it in this one?
yes, it is. It's in that one.
We haven't got to this one yet, but that's.
That
gonna
was
be
the
in there.
first document I went
Oh,
over. It
we did
lists
get to
all the
this one, sorry.
preschools.
So you see preschool, it won't show you, oh, you can figure it out from here, right? Because it says how many students are in it. So Bicentennial has a preschool classroom with 16 and 15.
And
So in all likelihood,
if I can interrupt quick, Bob, you're going to get next Wednesday a list with the summary list with that on it, so don't waste your time going through all the, it'll list where all the preschools are. You can waste your time if you choose.
And that does change from year to year. Sometimes we do move preschool if we have to add a classroom, so that often does happen. It changes from year to year.
sorry, and if I recall, there was a time when we had more regular ed students, right? There was more equity at some point when we first started the preschool. I seem to recall there was more balance, because I remember them,
I don't recall.
pretty sure I remember Marcia coming at some point and saying, well, we're basically at the minimum number of students we can have now, where we didn't used to be. Regular ed students. No? Okay. Did we used to have more than 5 regular ed students in the preschools, right? So now, instead of having, like in the past, we might have had 13 students, but 6 or 7 of them might have been regular, and then we had special needs students also.
That's correct. Before we started following the state guidelines.
Okay, following the state guidelines, wow, yeah, that's a minor rule. Okay, sorry, I lost track.
Mine's
Mrs.
a
Zine.
quick one. I would just like to ask Mr. Donovan, I recall you saying that the inclusive total cost of special education for the district is $30 million, according to the DOE, I think you said. Can I ask you what the total for the whole district is?
That is the total.
No, I'm talking special education. Now I'm talking about the whole district,
Oh,
inclusive of all, right?
I believe it's about 160 million.
Thank you. That's the figure. That sounds right.
Isn't it 154?
It's close to 160, yes.
Well, usually you're within a
We're not
couple
gonna squabble over
$100,
$6 million.
so I was just concerned that you had lost track. So it's on this 6G, Mrs. Ziem lays out the
Thank you.
percentages. I have Mr. Farrington and then Mr. Coppell.
Yeah, this Mr. Donovan guy, is he the one that balances our books?
Yes, I know. And 6 million, suddenly $6 million, $6 million is not a big deal.
I'll take
No
the
big
6
thing.
million.
But I would like to, what do we charge for tuition now for the typical students?
For the typical 180 a month?
$180
$180 a month.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cobb?
Thank you. And my question is, the next is a logical follow-on to that is, how are those children selected? Is it first come, first serve, or?
They have a sign-up registration time this time of year, and at one point, we had to do a lottery, I believe, because we still do the lottery for the 3-year-olds, so we still draw names.
Thank you.
Yep.
Dr. Murataki?
Yes, thank you. Actually, this is something I brought up a few years back, and it still appears to be true. It turns out that New Hampshire, if you look at the out-of-district private school placements for special ed, we're the 5th highest in the nation as a percentage of our student population base. It's relatively low, all things considered. We're at 0.56% statewide. The only states that are above us are DC, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. But the thing about
Dr. Murataki, sorry,
0.56%.
is that cost or number of students?
That's number,
Okay.
as a percentage.
Right, thank you.
But the thing is, the median in the United States for the states is about 0.1%. And there are states like Georgia that are in the 0.01%. I actually had a discussion with the Department of Education as to why this might be true. And they had some ideas, but they didn't know. But the point that this makes is that different states have different degrees of placement that may be more policy-oriented as opposed to we got more, kids with disabilities. So that's something that I think we ought to be looking into. In fact, our entire region here in New England has a substantially higher placement in private schools, out-of-district placements, than the rest of the country. So I'm just kind of curious, does that mean that we're just being more generous with our interpretation of the special needs mandate?
For
Because-
out-of-district? Is that, you're asking for out-of-district, or?
Right.
Well, the
Do you
next-
have an answer to the question that the Department of Education didn't have an answer to?
No,
guess is what
I don't, but I
Dr.
do
Murataki
have
is asking.
information on out-of-district for our district, if you want to go to the next slide, the
Okay.
next chart.
I'm not sure who we'd find that out from, I'm just
No,
not sure we're going to
this
have a
is something I
fruitful
think
discussion.
we ought to continue to dig at, because it's something that I think school boards across the state are interested in.
Yep. Okay, I hear you. Mr. Franklin?
Does it ever occur that a parent asks for their child to be evaluated and the district determines that the child is not identifiable, and then the parent goes to outside sources and comes back and says, I have documentation that says that they should be provided services? Do you ever get that kind of
Yeah,
pushback?
we have various situations. If we had a parent that said to us, would like to have our child evaluated, most of the time we'll convene as a team and we would do an evaluation. Most of the time, or sometimes we might try the things and come back as a team with the parent. And so after we do our testing, sometimes parents do seek outside testing and come back and say, you know what, we did see this, or we did find this, and we look at all of the information again and join as a team. Sometimes we might go and identify, other times we might try some other strategies before we do that. So different scenarios happen.
Okay, thank you.
Could you provide the board how many preschool classrooms you'd have to add to get at or below the state regulation? Any other questions on this slide? And can I just remind members, try not to have side conversations when other people are speaking, and if you are going to do it, please turn off your microphone, because these side conversations get caught in the audio. Anybody else? You want to move on to the next one?
Sure. The next one is the chart that says out-of-district disability.
The number? Got it. 6C?
6C. So as you know, there has been an increase in our district, out-of-district placements, especially in the last 3 years. So I'm going to speak a little bit about this. First of all, many of our students that are in out-of-district placements are due to emotional factors. Some of them have some aggression. These students often present with high risk, some unsafe behaviors. Many of the students that are identified as emotionally disturbed or emotional disturbance. Some of the students are identified as other health impaired. These students have anxiety, depression, and some other mental health challenges. The cost of out-of-district placement, the average cost is between $50,000 and $60,000. Later on, you will see some of the out-of-district placements are listed at $20,000, which looks rather low. And this is because we are required sometimes to pay for students who are joined with the court or in foster placement and reside in a different location or a different city or different town, often up north. And so we can't transport the student back here, so we tuition them into that school district. So you will see that's considered an out-of-district placement. And you will see some of those costs coming in a little bit lower than the average. We also have 2 students right now in residentially placed out-of-district placements. Those placements are about $200,000 each. These students have emotional difficulties, developmental disabilities, and it impacts their functioning in all settings. They require, at this time, a safe, a staff-secure facility. We are in the process of hopefully moving one back a little bit closer to a less expensive placement. The goal with these 2 students is to bring them back by the time they're at the high school level so they can rejoin the community as adults. And both of these students are doing very, very remarkably well in the 1 year that they've been in these placements. So it is life-changing, and they will most likely, with the therapeutic situations that they're in and the services they're getting, will be able to come back to the community.
Any questions on that one?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
I think I know the answer to this, but when the court places a student and requires certain services, does any money come with that requirement from the court?
No, I have some information on court placement, if you want me to just go over that, and then I'll answer
Terrific,
your
thank you.
question. So we have students that are court placement that are involved with the juvenile justice system due to delinquency.
Sorry, that's page 3, right, of this 6C?
Yes, I'm sorry. If you go to 3,
It's 6C, but I think it's page 3 that you're talking about right now.
so the top says out-of-district court versus educational. And there's another one as well.
One I'm looking at is 2016-17 special education out-of-district placements as of November 2016, and it has a court/educational placement
Yeah.
column. Another one right after it. Okay, so we're on page 4 then, which is a small chart that says special education out-of-district court versus educational placements.
So we have students that are court-placed. So if a student can be court-placed because they're involved in the juvenile justice system, these students might have got arrested, they've done something to be joined with the court. Then we have other students that families are joined with the Division of Family and Youth Services. Those students are joined because of the student has gone through abuse or neglect. So both of those cases, we often get phone calls, usually on a Monday, or, something happened over the weekend, a student has been arrested and is in the Sununu Center. They have to stay in the Sununu Center. You are obligated to pay for their education. So the state would pay for their living there, their residence, and we have to now educate them. Some of them are in programs, most of them aren't in programs. They would be in the typical high school getting some special ed services. And then the students that are removed because of abuse and neglect, like I said earlier, some of those foster care placements, there's very few in southern New Hampshire. Many of our students are placed up north. We have students as far as Concord and even north of Concord. We're still responsible to educate them. If a student moves maybe 40 minutes away, we can still educate them here because that's not too far to bring them back to us, but we have to pay for transportation. So it still is a cost to us. So that number has increased. It changes every day, but that has increased, I believe, over a two-year period from 26 to almost 40, give or take a given day.
So I'm having trouble, you're saying one thing, but I'm not matching to what the chart that I'm looking at. So there's two columns here. One says court, one
Yes.
says educational.
Yep.
Are you saying that the one that says court is not only that the court has found for somebody that they need to be placed in district placement, but also includes the foster care?
Yes.
And,
Yes.
okay, so when we say the number of students, some of those are temporary services that we provide, right? So if a student ends up in jail for a week, we provide services, but they might get out of jail and then come back.
It's usually longer than a week.
Okay.
It's usually much longer. In a foster care placement, the reunification can take months, sometimes up to a year.
So if I go back one page to the one that breaks it down by the location, the school that the service is provided in,
Yep, yes.
are some of these, I don't see like foster care like on here. So
Well, it's court because we get a court order that says the student needs to be moved to this location. So it's not specified there.
but I don't know how to phrase this. Are the students that are being put in foster care, they're included in this table?
Yes, and we
so they-
call them court. And the education one is what we do. Educationally, we place them.
So let me try, let's say Ashland Elementary School, that, I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying that could be a student that's in foster care in Ashland,
Correct.
for example.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Mr. Kaufman, and then Dr. Murdaki.
On that same page, the first line is the Adult Learning Center at Clearway, where we have 12 students placed.
Yes.
But it's my understanding, we may have 12 students physically there, but we have additional capacity, is that right?
Correct.
So the $296,000, that's for, that's 12 placements, but we really have,
We have one fixed price for that
Right.
school, so we have X amount of seats that we can have, so it's not student by student.
right, so shouldn't that reflect the number of seats rather than, I guess, the average, so the average cost is $24,000 for those, that's each student, each of those 12 students. Each student costs the 24, almost 25,000, is that's what,
Well, if you do the math that way,
well, that's what you did, that's what's done here. So I'm trying to say, don't we, I was just speaking earlier, there's 65 or 68 capacity, so don't we really, that's something different?
Yes.
have two programs, I know.
There's two programs. One is the special education.
Okay.
The other is non-special.
Non-identified students.
Non-identified students. So
Okay.
the 50-60 number is non-identified. This is a separate special ed program.
And it's only for 12 students, or is there
So
additional
it's-
capacity?
It's additional capacity up to 15.
Okay.
But the price that you see there, anticipated yearly cost, that's going to be paid whether you have 2 or whether you have 15.
Right,
Okay?
okay. So this is one of the programs, it's recommended that we bring
No.
back in-house?
Not this one, not the
I
special
thought
ed.
both Clearway programs.
Okay.
So for both Clearway programs are recommended for return, is that right?
It is.
Okay,
Sorry,
thank you.
Right. Mrs. Ziem?
While we're talking about Clearway and Brentwood, can I ask you, when you look at the two schools, what you see as the major difference in the population? You know what
Well, this, Brentwood has all of their students identified, where Clearway doesn't, and I think the young woman that spoke earlier today describes a student who has some anxiety or the need for a smaller, calmer setting. The standards for behavior at Clearway are such that students that have anxiety or depression, or the description that she described today, it's a very soothing, calm environment. The approach is different than some of the student. The population is different, and that
So you
there's
do
more
not think-
females.
Are you saying you do not think those two populations would mix well?
I think the populations are different. The needs are different. And we're looking at a population of all identified students.
And do you, finally, can I just ask you, one of my concerns, and I'd like your opinion, is the separation. She specifically spoke to the overwhelmingness of so many students. If they go to South and it is somewhat separate, is my understanding. May I put you on the spot and ask you your
That's fine.
opinion of that?
Mrs. Ziem, can I just clarify, by she, you mean the person who gave public comment at the beginning of the meeting? Is that who
Well,
we're
I'm
talking about, or-
asking for Mrs. Breen's opinion.
I'm just trying to clarify by when you say, you said, she said, I just want to understand who she is.
Well, we were talking, yes, I believe we were
The young
talking about
woman.
Okay.
the lovely young woman who spoke
Yes.
very eloquently.
So your question?
I'm sorry. My
Sorry.
question is that one of the concerns is that Clearway is completely separate. It is a separate building, and so there is no noise confusion to the extent that you might see in a building like Nashua High School North or Nashua High School South. But my understanding was that at South, there was going to be a separation, that they were going
Yes,
to try to...
I did speak, Grace Liberty and I did speak with Keith last week about what students with Clearway would need, and he has a very clear vision of how to make the situation so it isn't high anxiety provoking. So we understand that they should have separate entrances, that they need some seclusion. So he understands that, and we understand that as well.
So I would, at some point in time, I would like a clearer understanding, and maybe this is directed at Dr. Brown, of exactly how they're going to do that. If that means that we need to, and I'm not questioning.
No, we're at the beginning stages. We
Well,
don't
I mean,
have
it's a learning
anything-
process.
anything
But I
definite.
would be very concerned if, I'm thinking like, for instance, even, it's the same building, so I would just like to visually have an idea of how they're going to do
Yes.
that, so that I could feel comfortable that these people were going to be, that there was going to be enough privacy, is that the word, enough seclusion or
We'll
enough...
put that on,
Thank you.
Dr. Brown's list.
Thank you.
Dr. Murataki, did you have your hand up already, and then Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. I actually just have a request for administration to verify some data that I think is true. First, I stated earlier that New Hampshire's average of out-of-district placements is the 5th highest in the country at 0.56%. Could we verify with the State Department of Education if that number is still current? The second question that I have is that based on the numbers that I find on 6C, it appears that we have 104 out-of-district state placements for the previous year, 2016 to 2017. And I believe that we have approximately 11,178 students enrolled. So if I just run that calculation, it looks like we have a 0.93% out-of-district placement percentage as a percentage of the entire school. It's not quite twice what the state average would be, but it's much higher than the state, which is already the 5th highest in the nation. So could you please see if those numbers are correct? what is the state average percentage of out-of-district, and verify whether or not I calculated that correctly at 0.93% for us. Because even though we may not be able to do anything about the state being the 5th highest, if in fact we are nearly twice as high as the state number, that may be something we can actually look at here at the district. Thank you very much.
I'm going to guess, by the way, that one of the reasons Georgia has such a low rate is because their courts don't refer anybody to out-of-district placement. I bet you we could look at that and find out that's true. Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. Back to Adult Learning Center and the 15 students. Though it's proposed by repatriating, I don't know what to say, bringing the students back to South. Can you share with us what would the cost be per student? And so we could actually compare the cost of what we're paying at Clearway to the cost of bringing those students back to the high school.
Mr. Richard has asked for a budget of $250,000.
Okay.
Are we going to get a breakdown of what that budget includes?
Yes.
Mr. Farrington, then Ms. Hohensie, then Mrs. Ziem.
Yeah, excuse me, a couple of things on this topic for people who may be either here in the audience or at home looking at these numbers. These are big numbers. This out-of-district total is almost 5.1 million. As has been pointed out, some of them, we have no control over the court placements. We have talked here about bringing as many of these students as possible back into the district for services here in the district because it might save us some money. And also, I think it's better for the student and better for the family because a lot of these, excuse me, children spend a lot of time commuting every day. But in light of that, Mr. Hollow and I had a chance to tour Lighthouse in, when was that, November?
Yep.
And it's quite a wide range of ages for the students that are down there, and seeing that facility and what they can provide for our students, and that's 19 students down there. I just don't see how we could ever come close to providing the services that they get there for that kind of money. And then talking about money, we probably should mention for the people that are following this for the first time, we do get, the city gets reimbursed for some of these larger things, and the formula is what, 3.5 times the state average and all that sort of stuff. Can you just briefly summarize the formula?
But then they multiply it by that magic number to match the budget they have, so.
Yeah,
really-
well, yeah, they arrive at a number and then they adjust it based on how much the money they want to give us. But in theory,
So catastrophic aid does offset some of the costs for students, some high-need students, and so we have a really, we have to track all services, and we have to send that information to the state. We do get some reimbursement for this, and it goes back into the city.
Right.
The city budget, so we do get some reimbursement for that.
And what did that run last year, Mr. Donovan? Do you remember?
I have that.
Believe,
I'm going to guess it's not $5.1 million.
no, we're talking 400,000.
As we used Dr. Murataki's calculation that there seemed to be in the running with the federal government.
Something like that.
Mr. Farrington, you want to follow
no,
up?
I won't go there now.
Ms. Hohensie.
The superintendent was going to get that for us. It was just a
The budget,
follow-up
okay.
on the previous question.
Ms. Van Twyver.
Let me see if I understand this correctly right now, that special ed is asking $100,000 for an extra classroom and $250,000 to move Clearway into south? Is that what the budget is?
But you'd be removing, in theory, you'd be removing the cost of $296,000, which is what gets charged by Clearway.
Right, but I'm just asking, that's
Yep,
what...
you're correct. That's correct.
What the special ed is asking for now.
That's correct.
And also including an additional speech and language teacher.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else on this one?
How did, I'm sorry, how, the speech and path, where are you saying that fits in these figures, the 296 and the 250?
The speech and language pathologist is in addition to that.
Okay.
The preschool is booked at 100, the speech path at 50, so the two together, 150.
So I would have to add those expenses to the 296, no, to the, I'd like to know a net gain is what I'm looking at.
Yeah, what is the,
In terms of the total new money for special education,
No, Clearway and Brentwood, Clearway, if we move Clearway to south.
if you move Clearway to south, you save $350,000, and you spend $250,000. Separate from Clearway, you have a preschool request at $100,000, a speech and language pathologist at $50,000, and you have out-of-district placements at $339, Mr. Donovan? What's the additional cost for out-of-district placements?
It's about 350.
Thank you.
I'm
confused.
completely
I'm sorry, I'm
confused.
confused now.
Thank you,
So
I am too, Mr. Holloway.
what was that
Oh,
last
yes.
number?
The-
What does
no,
that
the-
represent?
District placement.
The budget is $350,000 higher on the out-of-district line. That's,
But that
Because-
doesn't affect Clearway.
has nothing.
That has nothing to
no,
do,
that has
that's
nothing
because
to do with
we're
Clear- That's because we're
spending more and out of-
underfunded.
Okay, all right.
And even with that, we're not even going to
So
be
I,
able to pay
so
it
just
all.
to be clear, the cost to run the entire program for those students that are currently in Clearway Special Ed, we're budgeting $250,000. Is that it?
We're budgeting $250,000 for an alternative program that would include the 10 special ed students that are currently at Clearway.
Okay, there's 12 on our list that we might have changed, but,
Can we just,
so are you, so I know, I just want to dig in a little further.
thank you.
Are you saying that this program would service other students as well?
Yes, I am.
Who would those students be?
Students who are in regular education but who need a separate alternative environment.
Are those also the students that currently go to Clearway?
Yes.
All right, we're going to need a,
There's-
need a session on this. so-
Yes, please.
Okay. Is that, we're planning to have that?
Yes.
All right.
Elizabeth,
Elizabeth? Ms. Van Wyver?
Could we have a financial showing of the monies and where they are? Just the money that they're asking for?
That
You're
special ed
asking
is for what? For the alternative program or for special ed?
Whole thing. I would like to see that spelled out, the 100,000 for the school, kindergarten, kindergarten with the, I can't even read my own writing because I forgot my glasses tonight. The special ed and language person, and then what it would cost to do Clearway. It's all spelled out so that we understand exactly how much money they're, I assume that we would have gotten that. And like I say, I can't see if it's in the book already. If it is, then just tell me where it is.
Mr. Kaufman, then Ms. Zoden.
Thank you. I want to pick up, if I can, on something Mr. Donovan just mentioned. He mentioned that in this year's budget, we're roughly 350,000. You want to add 350 into next year's budget to sort of account for our known shortfall this year, but it would still leave us short next year anyway?
Yes.
Did I catch you on that? Okay, good. So help me understand, if we wanted to fund the budget line pretty close to what we would spend next year, we would certainly add the 350 we know we're short this year, and then maybe you've got some kind of a number in your head. What would you like that number to be? In other words, you're saying give me 350. You could fund based on, and I know you live in this line item every day, so what should that number, or what would you like it to be?
Well, what I'd like it to be, I don't know if I could.
What should it be to balance that account? Let's
Thank you.
Balance account.
Thank you for
Well, keep in
translating.
mind, you need to count the special revenue fund also, which I'll be tracking, and I need to update that. But I'd suggest that the operating budget probably may need another 300,000 or so. It depends on how much I can get out of the
In
special
addition to the
revenue fund.
350 you're already recommending.
Yes, assuming this number stays at 5.1 million.
Okay. All set, Mr. Cobham?
Thank you.
Mrs. Oden?
Thank you. I know we pay for transportation to the charter schools, and I believe we're also legally responsible to pay for special ed costs at the charter schools. Can you tell me how much the special ed cost is?
What we decided to do at the charter schools this year is, rather than have tutors go in and charge per hour, we hired, from the school budget, we took last year from the operating budget, one classroom teacher's position, and each of the charter schools that we have the largest population, Micro Society and Gate City, we took a teacher's position and we cut it in half and put a teacher at Micro Society and a teacher at Gate City. And each one of those charter schools decided to pitch in their funds to make that teacher full-time. So right now, we took 45,000, split that in half, or 46,000, split that, so it's 23,000 for each school. So that's one cost. And then the speech language pathologists, the OTs, they go to the charter school to deliver services. If that student lives in their catchment area, they are responsible for delivering that service. So we have our staff that's already on board servicing students there.
I guess that's interesting because the night we were at City Hall and the charter school people were there, the representative from the Micro Society said they get absolutely no special ed money from Nashua. So, am I correct? Do you remember that? Yes.
Yeah, well, they get half, maybe they don't see it as, they get half. We pay half of
So
their
they do
teacher's
get,
salary.
the
Yes.
charter school, the Micro
Yes.
Society charter school does
Yes,
get money for
we are
special ed.
responsible to educate
Okay.
this and pay for their special education services.
Okay.
And that model has worked well this year.
Okay.
They might not have been aware of that funding situation.
Okay.
Are there charter schools in this city that have no special education students that we have to service?
Not that I know of, they all have special ed students.
What do you have left to?
I have just one, there's an overview document you want to take a look at, not tonight, there's a lot of information. What's the number on that, Dan?
6F.
6F, and that's an overall trend. We can easily prepare this year's information, but it does speak to where the money is going in terms of personnel, our expenditures. It has our CAD aid, it has our grant information on it. So you might want to take a look at that. If you have any questions at all, you can certainly email or talk to Dan or I about that.
So on this form in the lower left, and it says SPED school staff. So paras, psychologists, speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, CMs?
Case managers.
Case managers,
Yes.
okay. So we have 134 case managers, is that correct? Okay. Any questions without going into detail on that form, because we can look at it and ask questions later? Everybody all set? Any other questions for special ed? I'm just looking at Mr. Chopa over there, who's been very patient. We did inform you it might be later, but I'd like to get to him if we can. Thank you, Ms. Breen.
Thank you.
Ms. Chopa, come on down.
Good and tired,
Yeah, feeling it. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. I don't have any handouts, but Mr. Donovan had mentioned there were some ELL pages in the booklet. Do you know, what are those, Dan?
So 7C and 7D. 7C is an ELL enrollments over time. 7D is ELL students by school.
Just to give you something to look at as I am going on.
No, it's wise. If you bring stuff, we ask questions about it.
Well,
So-
I'm sure there'll be questions. I'll just start. New Hampshire is part of a consortium of 37 states that belongs to what's called WIDA. WIDA, what that means for us, how that impacts us, we, every year, every state has to do a high stakes testing for ELL. It's kind of like our Smarter Balance, and it's called the Access Test. And whenever a student is identified as an English language learner, when they register, they're given a home language survey. Depending on how they answer the questions, we either give them a screener or we don't. If we apply the screener and they qualify for services, the parent then decides if they want to accept services or deny. So no matter what, once they qualify, that means they're active, which means they have to take the test even if the parents deny services. So we have 5 schools where there are no ELL program, but we have English language learners in the elementary schools. They're Bicentennial, Broad, Charlotte, Maine Dunstable, New Searles. There's no ELL teacher there, but we have ELL students in each one of them. So that means each year all of those students need to be assessed with the access test. Now, students are active until they test out of the program. The benchmark is set by the state. The highest you can get on the test is a 6 in the areas of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And your overall composite score has to be at least a 5, and you can't get anything lower than a 4 in any of those domains. So until a student reaches a benchmark, they're active. Once they test out, then they go to monitored service. So they get monitored for 2 years. So the reason I bring this up is because I want to kind of highlight the responsibilities of the ELL teachers. They're not just responsible for the kids that are active. They're also responsible for the students that are monitored. And what that means is they have to gauge their academic progress. If the students aren't doing well, they work with the the mainstream teachers to ensure that the student, they give them strategies, whatever they need to kind of help the teacher work with the students. I'm sure you remember, Dottie, how being at Amherst Street. And they also do an awful lot, there's an awful lot of parental notifications that are, that they're responsible for. So we have a number of teachers. I was happy the ELL folks showed up here, and I'm glad I got to speak and didn't waste all of their time. So they,
Well, we don't know yet.
That's true. That's very true. So they're also responsible for, in the elementary level, so those 5 schools that I mentioned, where there are no ELL teachers, the elementary teachers are responsible for testing those students as well. So these guys are spread very, very thin. And over the years, we've seen our ratios rise. So I think that if you were to ask any one of them up there, that they would be feeling pretty stretched, pretty thin as far as the responsibilities that they're required to do. So funding, we have our operating budget. We also have a Title III grant that we get every year, and we also get an immigrant grant, which is much smaller, except for this year for some odd reason. So those are our funding sources. So if there are questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Mrs. Zine, did you have a question?
But I was just thinking, Mrs. Breen was nice enough to introduce us, and I actually recognize special ed more than I do
Oh, you want to
the
embarrass everybody in
ELLs.
the audience? Thank
Well,
you for your pride.
It's not my intent to embarrass you, but
No, they can stay right there because the camera can catch them. So,
Okay.
But you can now the challenge might be that I see if you can remember everybody's name.
I think I should be able to do that. Becky Leeds from Elm Street, Karen Carragher from Elm Street, Diane Collins from Sunset, Kayla Bassett from Lead Street, Danielle Booton from Lead Street, and Erin Falabella from, where are you now? We moved you around. Sunset and Fairgrounds. We had to kind of.
You're doing so well until that very
I
last.
know. It's the Falabella got me, which is odd.
All right, thank you for coming tonight.
Yes.
Hopefully, we'll make it worth your while by asking intelligent questions. Mr. Kaufman, no pressure.
Oh, I don't mind. Sorry, I was outside the room when you started speaking, but I did catch you said you had 3 funding sources?
Yes.
Do you have, was there a handout that I?
No, I can,
Can you just say what they are, please? You mentioned
oh,
operating.
they're Title III is.
Give us the amounts, please, as well.
Yes, yep. Do you want, I have the last 4 years for each of them. I don't have the
You always
operating budget, but I just have Title III and the immigrant grant.
Well, give me the latest year, and maybe you can provide it separately.
How about if you provide that in email?
Email, okay. Well, I can just for conversation's sake, this
This
year,
year's.
2016-17, it's $165,000. Last year, it was 193, so we're getting more students but lower funding. The immigrant grant this year is 27,000. Because of, the immigrant grant is interesting. The way that we receive funds for that is it's any student that's in Nashua School District that has been in the United States for less than 3 years is considered an immigrant. It actually has nothing to do with ELL. You can have a kid from Canada that speaks English or England, and they're considered an immigrant, and we get funds for them. So this year, we were only one of 2 districts that qualified, so that's why the funding is so large. So this year is $27,500. Last year was $7,300.
Mr. Kaufman? All set?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mrs. Eam?
I actually had a call today about the immigrant population. It was from an employer who had hired 5 from the Congo and from Burma, I think he said. And he was saying that there was a rumor going around that that Trump was going to pull the Medicare. I mean, I'm not, so are we hearing, is that concern among that population that you're hearing? Or?
I think if you were to ask the teachers, I think a good number of the students are pretty nervous.
Anxiety?
Yeah. Would you guys agree with that? Yeah.
Let the record show there was a lot of head nodding.
No, that's too bad. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anyone else? Mrs. Oden?
If I'm not wrong, last year you asked for another ELL teacher to go to the schools with the ELL students, the ones where we don't have ELL teachers. Can you just give us some idea of how the testing went for them, the access testing?
For the non-ELL schools?
The ones that we don't have an ELL teacher
So
for.
each one of those non-ELL schools has a sister school with an ELL program that's assigned to them. And we try to, well, actually, the last 2 years, because we've kind of just tag teamed the whole thing, and the elementary teachers kind of work together and cover as much of the non-ELL schools as we can. Normally, though, like if a new student arrives and we need to do the screening, the non-ELL school has a sister school where that school is responsible for going there to do the assessments. Okay. And this year, we're asking for more staff again. I don't think that we're so ballooned in our ELL schools. Servicing the teachers in the non-ELL schools would be too much of a luxury. We have to service the active students that we have in the ELL buildings.
Can I follow? Well, I will follow up then.
So I just want to interject, because you commented on, he requested an ELL teacher, but you didn't get that ELL teacher.
No, he didn't.
Just so people know.
I know we had a substantial number of teachers go through the UNH program for ELL certification. Have we done anything to try to place those teachers in the schools that do not have a permanent ELL teacher?
We haven't moved staff. In the high schools, the scheduling seems to be a real challenge because it's counterintuitive not to place as many ELL students as we can into those teachers' classes. We are getting, I think, a little bit better at it, and I don't know enough about scheduling to speak intelligently, but it is hard coding or whatever it is.
No one does.
Yeah.
Don't feel alone.
It seems to be very difficult to get the ELL students with those teachers that went through the programming. I didn't feel like I could move teachers around into those schools, so we haven't made those moves.
Okay, thank you.
So thinking about scheduling, there's nothing in the scheduling, is there anything in the scheduling that identifies the student needs ELL services and that the teacher has some code that says they're an ELL teacher?
Each student that's identified for in Aspen or X2, whatever you want to call it, there's a code, right on top, there's a code that identifies a student as ELL.
But that's all done manually, is that correct? Figuring out whether they're going to end up with, they have they have a software process that does the first thing, and I'm just wondering whether the software has anything in it that knows anything about ELL.
I would be surprised. I would be surprised if it does. Yeah. I could be wrong, but
because it's just a computer program, it can't possibly do that. All right, I have a couple questions unless somebody wants to jump over me. Okay, so when you look at your chart for your ELL growth, you're going to know exactly where I'm going.
Yeah.
In 2007 to 2008, you had a big bump up. What caused that?
So that was the first year that the state mandated the access test and gave us the cut scores. So before then, the years all before them, the ELL teachers could use their discretion as far as, I think that student's ready to go, and place the student on monitor status. That all ended with the implementation of the assessment in which we had to, they had to meet that cut score.
And then this year, there's a bump up, and you described a cut score. Is that the same cut score that we were using last year?
Well, I could say the bump from last year is a result of two factors. The first being that the access test switched to the computer from being a paper pencil test. And unfortunately, a lot of our students weren't quite comfortable with working on the computers for typing and a lot of those different skills. So we had less students test out of the program. So it's kind of creating kind of like a bubble. And the other factor would be the higher rate of placement of refugees in Nashua. So I think those two things combined kind of really bumped our numbers up. So, and we did see less students test out of. And I think, as you're aware, and we might as well just get it out there, WIDA has, they sent a letter. They did a cut score, like a standards review for the access test, and they brought representatives from all of their states. One of our teachers was part of the group, and they decided that the standards need to be higher. So basically what that means is if you have a student that took the test last year, and the same student took the test this year, and they answered everything exactly the same, this year they're going to get a lower score. So that's going to result in, again, a lower number, well, I don't want to say for sure, but unless, it probably will lead to less kids testing out, and our numbers, because we've been very consistent with students arriving. It's like 20%. So if you look at the years, like in between, like 2009 to 2015, we were testing out 20%, and we're receiving 20% testing out. So it was always that's why it's really stable, those numbers. So you see the jump there, moving to the computer-based test, and now with the higher or more stringent scoring, I would assume we're going to continue to see an increase.
So I just want to be, so this bump has nothing to do with the cut score?
No.
So we haven't even seen that yet?
Not yet.
And Mr. Chopra, could you tell us the status of the letter that we sent to the Department of Education asking for their rationale for this change? Did we get a response from them?
I did not.
And I believe Ms. Conrad indicated we didn't, and I don't think the superintendent has gotten one either.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to rant here for a little while because I'm a little tired of sending letters to the Department of Education that they don't respond to, because I'm pretty sure they're supposed to help us. And going to the cut score, because I did this analysis, if you go back and look at our students that are out of monitoring, that were previous students that, and this goes back actually to when the teachers decided whether they got cut, those students on average perform better on the standardized test than the average student in Nashua. So I'd like to know how it is that some testing company that has an incentive to have people have to take a test, because that's how they make their money, gets to change a cut score because they believe we need to have it be a higher standard than the average student who's coming out of our, if that's not the definition of not local control, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
And I understand how all this happens, but I think we should be more proactive, and that's the board, working through our legislators to find out what more we can do, because, this number could go up. We have no idea how much this number is going to go up, right?
Right. From my understanding from the teacher that attended the conference, she was against this, by the way, but there was a vote of the member states, and I would assume their feeling was which is, each state has a different cut score. So if certain states had a lower threshold, maybe, I don't know where it came from, but it came from the actual teachers themselves saying that students were being released from services too quickly. And that doesn't go with what your data at all, so.
No, nor do I think, if we go way back, right, I'm going to guess that these teachers weren't willy-nilly removing people from the ELO program because they didn't think they were ready.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
So I guess my argument would be, if different states can have different cut scores, I'm not so sure why we can't, as a local district, say, we want to have a different cut score, because we have proof that they're doing okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd have to do some work to prove that that's true. But I think when you get the number of students.
The test out? We just started the test last week. We normally get the results, I think it's going to be in May. Anybody know off the top of their head? End of May.
So send those to the board as soon as possible.
Yep.
And I'll raise a ruckus.
All right.
Mr. Kaufman, I'm off my soapbox now.
Okay, thanks. Well, I really don't have another one for this, but I'm sure I'll find one another day. But my question has to do, you specifically mentioned, you were stable, testing in, testing out, changed the method of testing, gone onto the computer. Two specific questions. Is the computer-based test one of those adaptive type tests?
Yes.
Okay. And my second question has to do with technology instruction for ELL students in particular, and it will be a rant and a theme later on about technology-specific training, just to give the board notice. I'll have one on that at some point in the future.
I'll note
But
I'll note you down for a rant at a later time.
Yes, you can put me down for two. But for tonight, not a rant, but I want to help, okay? This is where I'm headed here. So do you have specific needs around training the kids to use a computer?
Right.
You spoke to typing.
Yeah.
You could get keyboards, different languages, right? And they even have that in software now, where you could change a keyboard from English to Spanish. It takes about 2 clicks or whatever, at least on the Mac. I have no idea what pain it might be on a Windows machine. So do you have specific needs? Is there some budgetary impact?
So last year, we used Title III funds to buy a good amount of Chromebooks, because the odd thing is, when you look at the assessment, if we were that consistent for that many years in a row, right? They didn't change their instruction. So the method of they were tested on computer skills, which were low, right? So we used a good amount, knowing that this was coming. We bought a good amount of Chromebooks. We got software, language learning software in the elementary schools, just so kids have the headphones speaking into the speaker. They're comfortable, so they're not being assessed on their computer skills once they have that down. The high school, we were just today speaking with the teachers that we were talking about maybe buying Rosetta Stone, so they have the same experience of getting comfortable with software, and the middle schools have already begun. So we have to provide them with the technology so that they're comfortable using it. And what kind of service are we providing these students, is setting them out into the world without any kind of technology skills, given to where everything is heading? So I'm very much in line with that line of thinking.
Yeah, because we had previous discussions through curriculum where they were talking about the early grades technology program, and it was an hour a week.
Yeah.
And then in the middle and the high schools, there is no requirement around technology training. I want to dive into that some more during this budget cycle and understand it, if it's curriculum committee, wherever. I think we need to do a lot better than 1 hour a week for our young people and youngest people. And really, as a middle schooler in band or athletics, or a high schooler, you don't have to touch it in a class, as, you know, we're going to teach you how to use it.
Yeah.
And so you're good on equipment, is that
Well,
what I'm
we're
hearing?
going to continue to acquire the Chromebooks and continue using the software. And one of the teachers sent out an email to all of the ELL teachers with a great free site for typing for the students. The hard part is it just time in a day for all of these different needs that they have, and they need to teach them to acquire English to kind of fit that in. So I think it's going to be a matter of, you know, kind of group work, giving a smaller group of kids working on the computer, skills of typing or whatever, and other ones getting, instruction.
Can I ask one, even be my last question. So the notion of local control, and this is a state requirement, federal requirement?
Federal.
So at what point can we decide we had a better program, our kids are done better because of what we did locally, that we'd like to stick with it, before being burdened on a federally mandated program which has questionable results and produces more stress on our kids than we were doing fine before? I mean, that's a sort of rhetorical kind of thing, but at some point, if we have local control, I think we should assert it.
Well, so while it's a federal program, the federal program allows states to set a different cut score, apparently, because they do.
Yeah, so federally, we accept Title III funds. So if you accept Title III funds, you have to have an assessment. So the state decided to use the access test, as like 36 other states chose to do.
Right. And I don't think you necessarily have a problem with the access test. It is a way to, I think it's a matter of what we view as being competent to move into the regular population.
Correct.
So I guess what I'm saying is, it's not that we have to go to Washington.
It's about the money.
Because the state is setting the cut score. We could ask the state to allow local districts to prove that our cut score is the right cut score for the students that we have. Dr. Murtaki.
Thank you very much. First of all, there does appear to be legislation in the State Education Committee this year that would, if passed, allow local school districts to exercise such control. So I am hopeful that such legislation will pass. That having said that, Mr. Kaufman suggested that we look at this kind of testing requirement in curriculum. I think that would be appropriate. You see, my first language, written and spoken, was Japanese. I am an English language learner. And I'm very, very curious to determine what experts determined that the test for measuring competency for English language learners should have to be adaptive. That's mind-boggling. Other than the fact that there are companies out there that make a ton of money by essentially having states require that their adaptive tests be used. So I want to find out more about this, and perhaps curriculum is the correct place to do that. I'm also curious, Smarter Balanced Assessments were not only adaptive, but they also had psychometric testing, essentially to determine the grit of the student taking the test. Does this ELL access test also psychometrically test the student?
I know that there are psychometricians that have worked on it. I went out there to, where was I? Illinois, once on kind of one of these reviews, and I do remember psychometricians talking about things I didn't understand.
This is sounding worse and worse with more that I hear. So, yes, could we add in curriculum? All right, thank you. I think we need to find out more about this. Thank you very much.
But let me go back. Let's not make it overly complicated. It's the cut score that is the real.
That score is not changing. The rigor of the scoring is changing. So like I said, if the student did the same exact test 2 years in a row, is going to get a lower score this year.
That's changing.
It's just kind of moving
Instead
the,
of changing the cut score, they changed what a right answer means?
maybe the amount of, what was that?
This is just bad.
Scale score changes.
Well,
Yeah.
it all comes down to the same thing. They made it harder to pass the test.
Yes.
There you go. I'm no psychometrician, but I'm pretty sure that's what they did. Do you have anything else to present?
Yeah, I do. Did I forget anything that you guys want me to bring up? This is called wait time in a question. You guys are good?
All right,
Are you sure?
speak up.
Okay.
Any longer than we have to.
No, I just wanted, they waited a long time.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
So when I asked if you had anything else, you said I do, and then you turned to them.
That was,
So
yeah, I
you
wanted
don't
to
have it,
see.
You just wanted to make
I
sure.
just
they
wanted to
didn't
see,
have it.
yeah.
Good. Any other questions from the board? I don't see any. You are,
Comments?
oh, is it a short comment, Dr.
Very short.
Murataki? All right, Dr. Murataki.
Thank you very much. This was very informative.
You're
Excellent.
welcome.
It's one of the shortest comments Dr. Murataki has made. Mrs. Oden.
I just want to thank all the people that came tonight. You spent a long time here. You had a whole day. Well, we had a delayed opening, but I'm sure most of you were right in school or right in the office. But it's been a long day for you, and I know you have to get up early tomorrow morning. But thank you. You were dealing with very difficult issues sometimes, very complicated. Your budget, especially the special ed people, it's just amazing to, I think, all of us, and that's why we have a hard time going through this. But I want to thank all of you for all the work you do and for the time you spent here tonight trying to educate us. Thank you.
You're relieved, Mr. Chopa. Thank you. Any other business?
Move to
Motion
adjourn?
To adjourn, seconded by Mrs. Oden. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 9:15.